Today we're going to talk about a book that is spooky and it takes place in the winter. There is a lot of snow, and that book is Ghost Story by Peter Straub. And it's funny because I made a short about the fact that I was finally going to read this book because I had several people who have recommended this to me, especially because, I like horror. I was looking for some more books that were, kind of wintry type horror to read. And so I made this video and I had a handful of people in the comments telling me not to read it. It's a waste of time, this, that, and the other. I don't like it when people tell anyone to not read a book because it's very discouraging and I think it's just kind of crap. You could say you don't like it. You could say you hate it. That's fine. But like straight up saying don't is the freaking rude. For me personally, I have my own brain and I'm not going to listen to a stranger on the internet tell me not to do something. It just makes me want to do it more, Peter Straub is a horror author I've been meaning to read for quite some time. I had wanted to read this and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good horror book. I don't really see what people were all up in arms about. I mean, it was a super slow burn. It took quite a while for us to get into some of the more gruesome stuff, but it builds. You get, as the snowstorm starts to come and you get a little bit of that isolation going on. There's like weirdness to it. The characters were good. I mean, this book was written, I think, in like the late 70s. It didn't feel super old and not relevant, so I don't really know what people's actual problems were with this. Maybe they don't like slow burns. Maybe they just want to be a troll on the internet. So anyways, Ghost Story by Peter Straub takes place in this small town. There's this group of older men. They have this, I would call it like a supper time story club, and they call themselves the Chowder Society. One of the men's wives gave them that name, and that kind of stuck. And they basically come together and they tell like ghost stories and whatnot, scary stories, and that could possibly be true. And some are just completely made up. At some point, something that they all did earlier on when they were younger men all comes back to haunt them. And it seems like there's this weird evil that is after them and slowly picking them off. And so it kind of comes to a head when their friend Edward dies. And it seems like he died of, like, the expression on his face was basically that he died because he was terrified, or he was literally scared to death. His nephew had also written this book called The Night Watchers, and the Chowder Society starts talking amongst themselves, and they're like, oh, maybe we need to get the nephew to come here, see if they can help us, because when their friend died, they started having nightmares, like every night, basically kind of about their deaths that were coming for them and whatnot. And it seems in this book that maybe they had wronged a weird spirit or horror. And there is a lot of interesting characters in this. There are some people who think that there might be flying saucers or maybe Bigfoots going on. So I liked the look at it. Maybe stuff was leaning towards that kind of weirdness, but it was more a little almost weirder than that. And so you follow the story as you get some of the backstory about some of these other characters, and it alludes to this one woman who was this actress, Ava Galley, that something bad seems to have happened, but she ended up moving away and whatnot. And then we come into present day and her niece comes to town, and this seems to be really weird, and she has a really weird effect on people, and she's very beautiful, but she seems off-putting at the same time. And there's all these like layers that kind of come in. It's like we're making a freaking layered pastry dough here as we get into the story. So yeah, definitely a slow burn. Then you kind of see how that Edward's nephew ties into this and like what his backstory is. And he had been engaged to this woman, Alba Mobley. They ended up not getting married, but then she ended up being engaged to his brother. And then his brother died, and there's this whole weird backstory. And that woman had like some ties to this cult called the XXX that was also had some weird ties to like Charles Manson. So there's all kinds of like totally weird stuff going on. And how the nephew, his name's Don Wanderley, his story weaves in and ties in with everything that was going on with the men of like the Chowder Club or whatever. So you have Ricky, this guy Sears James, this Dr. John Jaffrey, and their friend Edward Wanderley, who had passed. And Edward would make these recordings of people, of celebrities, kind of like ghost-written memoirs. And he had talked to this one young actress she seems to be maybe the reason that he had died. And he had all these tapes of the kind of conversations and interview that he had did with her. But his friends are all like, after he died, were didn't want to go to his house. The house was left to the nephew, so that's another reason he's tied into this. And they didn't want to listen to any of those tapes or any of that stuff. And so basically, it seems like there's this weird trickster spirit entity that's like messing with them and slowly wants to get their revenge because of something that they all did. They did something. I'm not going to say what, because that's a huge spoiler, and, you know, pissed off this strange entity that seems almost from like some sort of like, it could be from like a Native American lore that comes back several years later to exact its revenge. And so the question is, do they all succumb to this? Do any of them survive? Do they defeat it once and for all? And if you like slow burns and you like weird books and you like stuff that like slowly builds as you get the details and layers it in, like you're making a, you know, luscious pastry. I don't know why I keep describing it like a pastry dough. I was thinking like all the layers you fold in, like if you're making croissants and you made your own dough. Anyways, I'm getting distracted and thinking about food. I really enjoyed this. I thought the story was great. It's a good ghost story. It's a good wintertime horror book. I felt it held up just as good today as probably when it was written. There might be a few things in there that are a little like whatever. I liked the characters. I liked the progression of it. It wasn't too slow. It was kind of like slowly going up and it builds to a crescendo, because when you get to the end, everything's all, what is happening? And it's weird and dreamlike and hallucinatory, and there's a lot going on in it. And if you like Peter Straub, you'll probably like this book. If you like winter horror that's a slow burn, you'll probably also like this book. If that sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.